What is up, all of my fellow weird ones out there, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Tony Michelle. We are not all love, light, twin flames, and unicorns. Over here on this channel, you know the deal, and let's get into it. Happy Capricorn full mother effing moon up in this bitch, okay? Yeah, happy Capricorn full moon. It is this week. What day? I don't even know what day I'm filming this, so I will put when it's on the screen with you know, I'm such a professional astrologer over here and everything, you know. I'm like not good with dates lately, so excuse me, but I will put the date on the screen of when it's happening so you can know. Okay, but anyways, I do know what's happening in the chart, just not exactly what day, because I don't even know what day I'm filming this right now. Anyway, so, but basically, we are having the Capricorn full moon this week. So a lot of the things that I'm talking about, because I'm a little late to filming this video, you may have already seen coming up in your life in some way, shape, or form. So just keep that in mind. As always, I'm going to talk about how this Capricorn full moon is going to be affecting us in general as a collective, which is going to give a lot of context and going to be the overall themes that we are all going to notice in some way, shape, or form. Likely over this week, basically, possibly even into next week. And yeah, but then after that I am going to go over each sign very, very briefly and just talk about what you could experience for your sign as well. Those are going to be quick, so I would definitely watch the first part of this video because it gives a lot of background, and generally it's going to be pretty similar for each sign, just in a different area of life, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, so let's get into it. So basically, we have a full moon. The full moon, as always, is when the sun and the moon are opposite of each other with the earth in the middle, so they're on opposite ends of the earth. It's like if the earth was a dinner table, the sun and the moon are sitting at opposite sides of the dinner table, is like a good way to think about it. Or if you're playing monkey in the middle, the earth's in the middle, and the sun and the moon are at opposite ends, I guess is another way you could think about it. But anyway, so basically, during full moons are times of heightened emotions, heightened intensity. We are, you know, heightened situations. It can be, the energy can be, you know, moving on up, elevated, you know what I mean? It's, you know, full moons are felt a lot more, usually a lot more, more times than not, they're felt a lot more because of that intensity. There's a spotlight on the moon, right? And what does the moon deal with? Our subconscious, our emotions, our internal worlds, our reactions, our reflexes, our, you know, all of the things that almost drive us in a way, you know what I mean? It's a very sensitive part of our being. It's a very sensitive part of who we are, right? And a big part, I cannot speak, even though Mercury's direct, a big part of who we are, right? And so basically with this full moon, and we have this particular full moon in the sign of Capricorn. Now, what is Capricorn, right? We are entering into Cancer season, which is why this full moon is in Capricorn, because the sun's in Cancer, and so the moon is in Capricorn. They're opposite signs. So to understand Capricorn, I'm going to talk a little bit about Cancer, but basically, Cancer is the mother, the nurturer, where we, the eternal mother, basically, like the womb, you know, where we feel. It is ruled by the moon. Capricorn is the opposite of Cancer, so therefore the moon does not like to be in Capricorn. Where Cancer is very sensual and giving and caring and like, let me meet your emotional needs, like let me make you feel supported and safe and secure with like that mothering type of energy, you know what I mean? Capricorn is like, grow the fuck up. No, I'm not here to make you feel comfortable, you know, I don't care how you feel. It's time to go to work. It's time to meet our goals. It's time to, you know what I mean, do what we got to do. You know, it's a little more rougher around the edges because it's an earth sign. It's still a feminine sign, but it is an earth sign. Capricorn is more like it's time to grow up. It's time to face reality. It's time to go out in the real world. So somewhere in our life with this Capricorn full moon, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about where in your life you could be feeling this based on your sign or your rising sign here in a minute, but because of this full moon, we are having a kind of grow the fuck up moment, or okay, it's time to get back to reality kind of moment, or it's time to face reality kind of moment. It's time to do the earthly things, the earthly practical things that we need to do in order for us to move forward, right? So this full moon is bringing up that Capricornian energy. It's like, you know, Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn right now is in Aquarius, the other sign that it rules. And so there is kind of like a distance to this full moon, a kind of coldness, a kind of, I mean, I don't think it's going to be like, you know, crazy, evil, shocking, or anything like that, although Pluto is in Capricorn, but the moon is not going to be conjunct Pluto at the time of the full moon. But Venus is going to be opposing Pluto. We're going to talk about that here in a minute too. So, but I feel like it's more so like we need to get grounded. We need to get back to reality and stop maybe, you know, maybe like the last couple weeks since the Gemini solar eclipse, our minds have been having trouble focusing. We've been all over the place. We've been in 5 different places at once in our heads, you know, like maybe it's been a little bit harder to actually like focus on our physical world, to take action on things, you know, because Mars was in Cancer. It's not now, but it was. We have been really spaced out mentally. This Mercury retrograde, all the Gemini energy, we've been having so much going on at once. It's been really, really hard to get focused and stay focused. And so this Capricorn full moon is actually, in a lot of ways, really good right now, because it's like, where do we need to get back to the basics? Where do we need to get to the necessities? You know, Capricorn is like the bare bones of things in a collective sense, right? Like, it's the foundation, it's cardinal earth. How do you build something, right? Like, to build a house, you got to build the framework, right? You have to actually build the bones of the house, so to say. Capricorn rules the bones, right? And the body. So basically it rules the parts of our body that hold us together, that hold us up, you know what I mean? That keep us dense, right? Earth is dense. It's not like, I mean, unless you're playing in mud or something, but for the most part, it's like, you know, dense. It's like you can get a grip on it, right? Like, whereas water is very emotional, etc. Air is just, you know, you can't really grab onto air. So we've just been kind of like, you know, and this Capricorn full moon is like, okay, no, we need to get back to work. We need to focus on what's important, what's going to keep us together, you know, what's going to actually, like, what's actually needed to be focused on, right? We need to get back to our physical things, our earth, we need to ground, you know what I mean? We need to do things in a more grounded sense rather in a scattered sense, basically. And so that's what this Capricorn full moon is bringing up in some area of our lives. Now, it could also be bringing something back around that happened in the beginning of this year in January when we had the Capricorn new moon. And it's like really crazy to think that we're already having a full moon, like, to a new moon that we've already had this year, you know what I mean? Like, we're halfway through the year already. But so basically it's like, okay, like, you know, something's coming back up, you know, and a Capricorn has more of a serious tone to it because it's ruled by Saturn, so there could be some seriousness. It's like, where do we need to get serious? Where do we need to buckle down? Where do we need to quit, you know, playing in our feelings or playing in our emotions? Where do we need to get serious and buckle down? And this is going to prepare us for the new moon in Cancer that we're going to have in 2 weeks, where we do start a new emotional beginning, but it's one that's based off of more stability, more of a solidness, you know, behind it, because we buckled down, because we did the work, you know what I mean? So that is what I feel like we are going to be seeing with this Capricorn full moon. Now, on top of it, we have Venus opposite Pluto right now. So Pluto is in Capricorn, at the end of Capricorn. Venus is at the end of Cancer. And so there's this really intense dynamic coming up right now with Venus, the planet of relationships, harmony, peace, money, you know, aesthetics, like, you know, feeling good and, you know, glamorous and yada, 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 right? Like, things that are pleasurable and, you know, things that bring us pleasure in any way, shape, or form, right? In Cancer, the sign of the mother, right? And so we may be really seeing these kind of mothering themes, or these emotional relationship themes, codependency themes, where our needs need to be met in relationships. It's so funny because I was just actually like watching a movie, and in the movie and then I just kind of turned it on because I was eating, and I was like, you know what, like I need to watch something while I'm eating. I'm weird like that. And I didn't. I was like done. I was over social media. I was just like, I cannot do any more social media right now. I just want to turn something else on. I want to get off my phone for a while, like. And so I turned this movie on, and literally, and this is like a perfect way to really explain this Venus-Pluto opposition. So in the movie, there's this couple that have a child, and they're like so happy to have a child. And the movie starts off with, explaining the background of this guy who's the main character, and then he has a wife, and they have like a young daughter. And they're talking about he's talking about how much he loves his child, this, that, and the other. And then their daughter dies. There's like a crazy accident at the beach, and boom, she's gone. Pluto, you know what I mean? And then also I saw on Netflix, before I clicked on this movie, there was a new movie, I think called Fatherhood, I think with Kevin Hart, and that was about his significant other dying and him having to raise the child. I didn't watch it, I just saw the previews, but him having to raise their child on his own, as his first child as a father. Anyway, so I think that's really interesting because this is all like bringing up really interesting dynamics between this Venus and Cancer, the mother. And it's not even like in the case of movies, it's not even just that it's mothers, like in my case, these two movies that I've, was just talking about, it's the father, but the father is like, it's still a child, it's still raising a child, it's still, protecting a child. There was this protection energy to Cancer, this energy of needing to help you feel safe and secure, to nurture something that cannot fend for itself, in the world, to protect it. That's what the womb is all about, right? Like to secure something. And there's this certain vulnerability and innocence to Cancer, in the way that it protects what's innocent. It protects, it's the eternal mother. It is birth. It is the womb, right? So with Pluto, big bad Pluto in Capricorn, this is the hard ways of the world, right? The hard, harsh, serious, dark, sometimes violent, threatening, deep, intense ways of the world, with it being in Capricorn. And so these are the themes in general that I think we're going to see. Interpreting that this could look like, other than the movies I brought up, but interpreting that this could look like also like relationships. Now I'm not saying, oh my god, everybody stay home, like your family is gonna die or something. Like I'm not to that extent, but we may see themes like this in headlines. Pluto's not always death. Sometimes it's a massive change, or this in a really great way. This could be like connecting with someone on a really intense and deep level, or having really great sex, you know what I mean? Like that is another way that this could work out. This could also be a lot of the times with Venus Pluto stuff is an unearthing or a revealing of hidden or dark or subconscious things within a certain relationship in your life, or within a family dynamic within your life with Venus and Cancer. So another way we could see this is secrets with family or relationships. We could see this with I think this is interesting. We're having this full moon in Capricorn. It's not going to be conjunct Pluto, but it's in the same sign as Pluto. So like I was saying, it does kind of roll back around to, what are the harsher areas of life? Where is it that we need to kind of face reality, even if that reality sucks, even if that reality seems kind of dark or scary? And that's basically tying back into this opposition with Venus and Pluto? Where is it that maybe it's time to grow up? Maybe it's time to be more aware that you can't always be comfortable. You can't, then you never change, and I think that's a massive lesson of this Venus-Pluto opposition. Now, we may see things in like news, headlines, themes of people in power, women or, women's rights or beauty, things like this. We may see like a trend for the darker side of beauty or the darker side of sexuality, the darker side of women. There could be this general sense of like the dark side of femininity coming up, or the more chaotic, wild side of feminine energy coming up. And so, Venus is peace where Pluto is chaos, you know what I mean? And so Venus is peace where Pluto is disruption. There may be subconscious patterns as well coming up in relationships. There may be some codependent stuff coming up. There may be some stuff from the past coming up with relationships, family, social dynamics. And so these are all themes that you want to look for this week. That opposition will be waning by the end of this week, so don't worry. But and we already had Mars go across it, and that was probably going to be worse than Venus, you know what I mean? This could be a really good time, though, since Mars already went across it with Venus, to actually mend something that was destructive or that was stirred up in like the last couple weeks, to reconcile something or to integrate something, to find a way to compromise something or negotiate, a certain argument or a certain disruption that came up in some way. If that did happen for you in a relationship or in the family, this would be a time where you could possibly see like a mending of that, so anyways, so that is basically all that I have on the general stuff going on this week. Mercury is direct, by the way, really quick, so we are probably going to start seeing a lot of puzzle pieces starting to fit together over the next few weeks, a lot of truths coming out, a lot more information to back up the information that came out, some shifts in information or mindsets about certain things. What I've really noticed, I was saying this today on my Instagram, what I've really noticed about this Mercury retrograde in Gemini is there'll be like something will shift and change, and it's like and then it's like, oh wait, never mind, just playing, and then you're like, oh okay, I can breathe again. And that like seems to happen a lot. There's like some crazy shift and you're like, oh my god, like I'm gonna have to change everything, and then like literally a day later or a week later it's like, oh never mind, that's not what we meant, sorry, and then it's like, oh okay, like I can breathe again. And so yeah, there's a lot of kind of shifting in the narrative, the situations, everything, our mindsets. And so that's going to steady out now that Mercury is going direct, but prepare for some last final completions to that is basically what I want to say about that. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into the signs, and let me know down below if you do see any of these themes happening in your life or in the world, in the headlines, in other people's lives. Definitely let me know down below. I love hearing what you guys have to say, and if you guys see any of this, then it really it's really interesting. I love reading your guys' comments and stuff. I am working on the July videos. I started early for once, so those will be rolling out in the next week. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the signs. Alright, Capricorn, obviously starting with you guys, since it is your full moon. So this full moon is happening in your first house sector, so health, family, your body, your appearance, yourself. This deals with yourself, so this is definitely a wrapping up of something to do with yourself that maybe started your birth or in January around your guys' birthday. So this is a time where it's like, okay, what are you completing, or what peak moments are happening that are maybe bringing that time frame back around? Are you working on your body? Have you been neglecting your health or putting off something to do with yourself? You know what I mean? This is definitely a time where it's like, okay, I need to get back to me. I need to get serious about this. I need to buckle down. I need to put in the work if I want to get to where I want to go. Okay. Also, this Venus-Pluto opposition, Pluto in your sign, Venus in your 7th house, this could definitely be a time where you are maybe wanting to make some changes regarding your relationships or certain social situations, certain friendships, certain marriages, partnerships, significant others. Maybe you are, maybe even like business partnerships or something like that, where you are wanting to make some changes, or you are wanting to get deep into something, or there could be some changes happening on the other end of whoever you're dealing with. Okay, but this is definitely a time where you could reconcile, negotiate, compromise, work something out, come to some kind of agreement if you wanted to. It's actually kind of what I feel like with your chart, with looking at this for you, is it's actually kind of up to you with Pluto in your sign. Like if you want to compromise, like Venus in your opposite sign is like, other people may want to be compromising with you or negotiating coming to an agreement with you, but it's kind of like, do you want to do that with them? You know what I mean, is really the key here in my opinion. So that is what I'm seeing for you guys, Capricorn. So moving on to Aquarius. So for Aquarius, this full moon is happening in your 12th house of things that are hidden. This is endings, this is basically self-undoing certain habits, certain patterns, certain cycles, where things are hidden, basically. Things could definitely be coming to light around this time. You could be seeing where maybe you've been avoiding things that are really serious that need to be addressed. Maybe you have certain subconscious habits that are coming to light around this time. Anything that's kind of coming out from the dark is like really, really big right now for you guys, Aquarius. There's a lot being revealed. Where do you maybe fall into certain, self-destruction type of habits? Where do you need to change? Where do you need to make some big changes? Where do you need to heal something? Where do you need to integrate something? Where do you need to let something go? That's kind of the energy you're dealing with for this full moon. So moving on to Pisces. So for Pisces, this full moon is happening in your 11th house sector of friends, social circles, social groups, your aspirations, your long-term wishes, your place in the world, any like-minded people that you talk to or network with, like social media, anything like that. So with this full moon, this could be bringing up social situations, certain goals, certain future reservations that you have, certain future achievements that you want to make. And it's like getting serious about something, getting back to something, or seeing the truth about maybe certain friends or certain people in your life, also like just really buckling down on certain social situations that are maybe need to be changed drastically. With Pluto there too, and Venus, opposite in your 5th house, it's like, the way that you thought something was going to go originally, maybe even starting back in January or so, the way that you originally thought something was going to go is changing or has changed drastically. And it's kind of like, how do you want to proceed forward with something now is kind of the energy that I'm getting for you guys, Pisces. So definitely let me know if that ends up resonating true for you guys down below. Okay, so moving on to Aries. So for Aries, this full moon is happening in your 10th house of your career, your public image, your reputation, your worldly achievements, your public achievements, anything that you want to do in this world. Like, what do you want to do to make a difference? What do you want to do involving the world in some way, or involving your long-term kind of goals, your achievements, the things that you want to leave behind, so with this full moon here, you could be seeing a lot of those themes coming up with your career, authority figures, reputation, certain goals that you have. It's like your future may be changing, the way the certain goals that you were moving towards may be changing now. Certain things that you had planned for your future or your career may be drastically changing now, you know what I mean? And this could be due to something going on in your personal life,
buddy.
something
Third
going
in
on
a
in
row,
your family,
or
just something going on in your career in general, you know. So there's definitely, you're definitely like having to face reality in terms of your future, your career, what you want to do, and getting serious and buckling down. Also authority figures, you know, you could be dealing with some stress from authority figures for some of you guys around this time too. Okay, so moving on to Taurus. So for Taurus, this full moon is happening in your 9th house sector of your world views, your belief systems, higher education, learning, where you feel like you grab meaning and purpose from life, basically. Also your religious views, your political views, your world views, you know, your ethics and morals are kind of here. And so those are some things that could really be coming up around this time. With this Capricorn full moon, there could be a theme of authority figures. There could be a theme of really getting serious again about learning something, or about what feels ethically right to you, or your own ethics, right? Certain rules and regulations that may have come up in your life, or certain like really big changes when it comes to your outlooks on things and your worldviews that maybe have changed a lot since the beginning of the year, and you're having to take a different look at now. But this full moon is really bringing up some peak moments here for you to look at when it comes to your outlook, when it comes to your views on situations, and what is driving that. If there's some kind of subconscious thing driving that, you know, you could find yourself, maybe you found yourself in some arguments or debates, etc. Like you've been finding yourself more opinionated than normal the last, you know, few weeks. And Venus moving and opposing Pluto in your 9th house is like, okay, just because you view something as a threat, or as the wrong thing, or as dark, or whatever, you know, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean it is. How can you integrate this? How can you come to a level of acceptance and be comfortable with it? Like, you know, how can you find a way to compromise, or find a way to let this go? So that is really what I see coming up for you guys, Taurus. So okay, so moving on to Gemini. So for Gemini, this full moon is happening in your 8th house, baby. So very turbulent, emotional, sensitive time, where maybe, you know, the 8th house is a really it's a rough house, I'm not gonna lie, you know what I mean? If you know about astrology, then I'm sure you know about the 8th house anyway, but it's a rough house. So are you feeling, you know, what are you hanging on to? It's really about what you're hanging on to, what you need to purge, what you need to let go of, what you need to change, what needs to die so you can move forward, right? Is basically the name of the game here. So this Capricorn full moon is like, okay, what do you owe? What are you lacking? Or what do others owe you? You know, it can be money, resources, or energetic exchange. It doesn't really matter. You know, but this could definitely be bringing up, you know, getting serious and buckling down on finances, money, resources, debt, you know, something that you may have started or had goals for the beginning of the year. You know, it's like you're coming back around to that now and seeing if it's where you want it. And if not, then there's more work that needs to be done. There's more, you know, we need to buckle down and get serious about it again, you know? So, but yeah, this is like definitely a time of where it's like facing, you know, facing the music about something possibly that you've been burying, or that you've been avoiding, you know, and so you could see some of that coming up, Gemini. Also with Pluto there, opposite Venus, it's like you may be trying to negotiate, compromise, or come to some kind of agreement with somebody, you know, that you are in some kind of financial thing with, whether it's your partners, whether it's a partner, an ex, a financial institution, trying to get a loan from someone or somebody that you owe. You know, there's some kind of agreement that could possibly be made here with this full moon. So okay, so moving on to Cancer. This full moon's in your opposite sign, so your relationship sector of other people, any kind of relationships with that you have in your life. And so you're definitely seeing a theme with relationships right now, especially with Venus in your sign too. I really feel like for Cancer, this is kind of a time where it's like, am I going to keep putting up with this chaos? Am I going to keep putting up with this change? Am I going to try to calm this down? Because it's like, yeah, you could probably, you may be able to come to some kind of understanding, agreement, compromise, negotiation. You may be able to work things out. But do you want to keep doing that, or is it better to end something? If you have somebody in your life that's a bit unstable, chaotic, maybe causing a lot of fear or stress or, whatever, or they could, it could be just that they're going through something stressful, in which case would change things a little bit. But still, like, if you were relating to the first scenario, like if there's somebody in your life that you are really struggling with because they're kind of, maybe not being 100% upfront or something along those lines, do you want to keep doing this? You know what I mean? You're revisiting something a cycle that started in January, or maybe even certain themes from January. And so this is definitely a time where you're like, okay, you're kind of at the halfway point. Am I going to keep doing this, or am I going to change this now? And so, yeah, or you could just have someone in your life, like I said before, that is going through something, in which case you could be very soothing and comforting and supportive of them with Venus in your sign. So anyway, so moving on to Leo. So for Leos, this full moon is in our 6th house if you're Leo rising like me. So this is about getting back to reality, honey. Getting back to the mundane, boring shit that we've been neglecting that we need to do. Oh, you need to do laundry. You have this appointment that you've been putting off. You have this, work that you need to do that you've been putting off. You have this, whatever the case may be, this doctor's appointment, this health thing, this, it's like, okay, what have I been putting off that's like not very glamorous, that I'm not going to get like a bunch of glory for doing. I just need to do it. Like, it's like the down and dirty work that you don't want to do, you know what I mean? That you've been putting off. And it's like, okay, this Capricorn full moon is like, okay, we need to get back on this shit. We need to get back on our health or our diet. We need to get back on our jobs, our work, our chores, our laundry, you know what I mean? Like, whatever the case may be. Or we need to, like, rearrange our lives or schedules in some way to get this stuff done. So I was like super distracted because there's like people walking in and they had like a whole filming set up, and I'm like, I always feel like people are probably looking at me weird because I film right in front of like my sliding glass door because it's where the most light comes in. And so I always feel like people are looking at me weird because I'm sitting here filming. But I just saw 2 people walking with like this big box light, a ring light, a freaking, tripod thing, I'm like, damn, they got the whole setup going on. I just got a ring light over here. But anyway, so no, so yeah, it's like getting back, you're circling back around to something, you're revisiting something, certain goals or certain things that you were doing on a day-to-day basis that maybe you started in January that you're kind of circling back to now and revisiting. It's like, okay, I need to get back to the basics again. I need to get on my groove again and start working again. This could be health stuff coming up as well. For some Leos, it just kind of depends. That is being fueled by certain subconscious habits that you have to cling to, certain feelings, memories, etc. that you think that you need, okay, or certain codependent issues, certain attachments that you're clinging to that could be bringing up certain psychological, physical, health-related issues in your day-to-day reality. And so if you are able to emotionally let go of that and integrate those things and purge those things around this time, you can see a lot of progress. And with this particular full moon and this Venus and Pluto transit, so that's something else. Okay, so moving on to Virgo. So for Virgo, this full moon is happening in your 5th house of children, your joy, you know, love, romance, dating, anywhere where you really find your joy and where you really feel fortunate, you know, and that's why it can rule over children and fertility. So you could definitely see some things here with children and fertility, like some reality checks, basically where maybe you're just feeling like hit in the face by something, like, oh my God, I had no idea, and then boom, or some kind of situation comes up where it's like, oh, I need to grow up here, or I need to be more mature here, or there's something here that's forcing me to kind of face the music or face reality about a situation, or you know, like buckle down about a certain situation. That could definitely be happening here for Virgos. And this could also be bringing up themes of sexuality and love and things like that, as I was saying as well. Also, you know, certain goals that you may have started at the beginning of the year, you could be revisiting right now, with love, sexuality, joy, pleasure, children, and certain, you know, maybe even work goals that you had as Capricorn, can be a sign of work with Saturn also in the 6th house of work. So, you know, right now you're kind of finding the joy within the, right now for you, I guess I should say, it's about finding the joy in the, it's about finding the joy in situations that normally feel like work, you know, that normally feel really mundane, or, you know, those kinds of things. It's about like learning to find the joy in those situations. And yeah, so that is what I'm seeing for you guys, Virgo. So moving on to Libra. So for Libra, this full moon is happening in your 4th house sector of home, your family, you know, your personal life, what you do behind closed doors, land, property, etc. So you could definitely be seeing those themes coming.
Oh, pardon me. This guy's excellent. I'm really glad we found this guy's talk on this.
Hi, this is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology, and today I'm doing a video blog on the question, how does astrology work?
This guy's like the Irie
Now,
Butler
this
of,
is
like,
a topic that I've decided to cover after a recent video that I did on the intersection between modern
like
psychology and astrology. After that recording, I got a lot of questions from people, basically surrounding the question of, well, how exactly does astrology work, or what exactly is it doing, and things like that. So today's talk has been designed to at least present an overview of some of the major ideas about how astrology works, and in particular, you know, my own views as an astrologer as to how astrology works. Now, two particular ideas about how astrology works. We're going to be looking at these two today. And I want to just say right away that this doesn't mean that there isn't a huge history of different ideas and philosophical speculation over thousands of years about how and why astrology works the way that it does. So this, almost, I always sort of try to say this at a lot of the beginning of my talks, but this is not meant to be authoritative or the definitive final answer, right? Today's thoughts hopefully inspire, stir up conversation, and present to you sort of the positions that I've arrived at over 7 years of full-time practice and more than a decade of being devoted student of astrology. And other people out there, I also defer to my colleagues and other astrologers, and to all of you and your experiences as well. They're all, in a sense, a part of, in my opinion, a continued working out of our understanding of how astrology works. So I don't really think that we ever come to a full understanding of how the universe works, right? We have to be very careful not to, be
It's crazy, man.
proud, right? We don't want to be arrogant about this, but there are a few things that I want to look at today. There are two major positions that I'm going to be exploring very broadly, and intricate, involved conversations about either position, again, could take place. But very broadly speaking, the two positions are the causal position about how astrology works, and what I also am going to refer to very broadly as the divinatory position. So there's the causal and divinatory positions. The causal position is the one that I think a lot of people take up knowingly or unknowingly, especially in modern astrology. And it has a deep, long history in astrology. It's not just modern, but it's I think it's probably really predominant in today's astrology. The causal premise goes like this: the planets are causing things to happen. That's it. It's that simple. It's just the planets in the sky, as they're doing whatever they're doing, are responsible for things happening the way that they do. So you get this, for example, in the modern astrological lingo. You see it everywhere online when people say, "Oh, Saturn's really messing with me," right? Or you say, "Saturn's going like this and going like this." It's talked about as though it is as causal as, say, like a rainstorm coming through. It's going to be wet outside, like it's like physical conditions that the planets are somehow beaming down, right? That's the causal position. Causal position says the planets are like causal influences, or like causal rays or beams, that the planets somehow are mechanically creating certain kinds of conditions or even kinds of outcomes or events. A lot of people believe that, and they don't necessarily, it's not necessarily something that you really look into or get really deeply involved with. That's just the position. So for example, how does it work? If we're talking about how does astrology work, one of the questions you might have would be like, how does it work that Saturn entering the 7th house of your birth chart creates a divorce, or means a divorce, or causes a divorce? Does it cause the divorce? How does it mean that, or how does it work that Jupiter entering a 10th house results in promotion? How does a birth chart work at all to be able to say accurate things about a person or the past, present, or future, right? These kinds of questions are at the heart of how does astrology work? And the causal position is roughly, it works because the planets transmit energy or beams or influences or rays or some kind of physical causal power that creates the changes or conditions occurring in the world. So that's the first position. Now, what I want to do is break down some of the more specific details about this position, and then outline why it's not for me, why I personally don't take up this position, and what I do take up in its place. And again, food for thought. If you disagree or agree with me, no big deal. This is hopefully what I really want my video blog to bring to people is deeper astrological content, but in a good spirit, not in the I'm trying to convert you to anything necessarily. I try to make good arguments from my point of view, though. So how is it? Let's talk about the causal point of view and birth charts in general. The birth chart works because this is the causal point of view, sort of speaking, for a long time now. This goes all the way back in some ways to Ptolemy, one of the earlier astrologers, later Hellenistic tradition, but is still an early astrologer and someone who's had a authoritative influence throughout much of the rest of the history of astrology since Ptolemy. The birth chart works because the heavens impress upon the seedling of the child at the moment of its birth a kind of energetic blueprint. Now, this is the view that I would say most people in modern astrology have. And I myself sort of discovered through reading other people who have pointed this out, my favorite author being Jeffrey Cornelius, in a book called The Moment of Astrology, which is a fantastic book if you really want to get deep into these questions. That, wow, yeah, that's what I believe. Was there any other way to believe? I thought that's what astrology is. So let's say it again. The child is born at a particular moment, and it's sort of like a piece of clay. And the planets at the moment of birth are sort of impressing upon that piece of clay certain kind of subtle energetic blueprint or makeup, right? That's the basic causal idea. And then the life is about the plant growing into the sort of growing into and expressing those impressions that are imprinted upon it at the hour of birth by the planets. That's predominantly the modern perspective on astrology. So life is an expression of the combinations of energies impressed upon the child at birth. The life will thus play out within the parameters of these expressions, but especially in modern astrology, what we emphasize is that the more that you understand the energetic patterns impressed upon you at birth, and you understand those parameters, the more that the parameters become something like energetic possibilities. And the more real control you have over how these energies manifest or are used, the more that your chart becomes a little bit like a pair of virtual reality goggles. You're sort of, you take the joystick. If you don't understand the chart and its energetic possibilities, then it will sort of play out however it plays out unconsciously. It'll just grow into, some expression of those qualities. But if you really know them, then you get to shape it the way that you want. Now that's the view that the planets impress upon the child some kind of causal influence at the hour of birth is old. But the view that you get to know those patterns, they become possibilities, you sort of then grab the virtual reality stick and create it to be what you want it to be, is new. That's relatively new. And it's a predominant way, a philosophical lens that is used all over modern astrology. Again, like I said, the view that the planets have some impression upon the child at birth dates back to Ptolemy, though. That itself is very old. And Ptolemy's model of the cosmos was originally a kind of scientific model. It was attempting to explain, in some ways, the mechanics of celestial influence upon earthly matters. And it was astronomy, but it was also it was astronomy, it was wrapped in with astrology, but it was also, as part of a sort of blossoming, slow, gradual blossoming of materialist science, where your basic interest is the mechanics of material reality. Ancient astrologers, to some extent, are interested in the mechanics of material reality because they're interested in the mechanics of karma, which they see as the operating rules of material reality. So originally there is some connection between, astronomy and sort of science and astrology. They're interested in the study or laws of fate, which are thought to be the governing cause and effect sort of rules of material reality. So these early theories, in a sense, begin very spiritually. However, at a certain point, modern science basically disproves Ptolemy's causal model, right? Ptolemy's explanation of how things work in the universe or in the cosmos at large is disproved. There's no observable, and now really there's no observable scientific explanation for the planets creating divorces, promotions, deaths in the family, or whatever else. There's no in the spirit that Ptolemy started in with trying to explain the sort of operating laws of the cosmos. There's no that attempt has failed, right? It doesn't work. It's also, again, really pretty new to view the chart as a set of sort of energetic impressions and possibilities that you can gain control of and navigate. That's also very new. Now, I have various reasons for rejecting these models. One of them is just that very, very simply, most causal models of astrology cannot be proved in the language of scientific materialism. You can't sit down and you're not going to be able to convince scientifically minded people that there is a really good, scientifically sound explanation for how astrology works. You can try to do all sorts of gymnastics with things like quantum mechanics and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, there's no great explanation as to why you can use birth charts and get really amazingly accurate predictions. Right? That's
if you
not.
can accept the moon.
It's not it's not, at least it's not easy, and it puts a
moon
target on our
has
backs. It makes us pretty much look like idiots, in my
case
opinion, to try
example.
and explain astrology in the language of causal,
We're
you know, modern science.
70%.
So that's me, though.
Water.
Take that or leave it.
We
Ancient astrologers
know
also believed in fate and karma.
moon
And though
has
free will existed for ancient astrologers
strong
alongside
tidal
of
effects, like
providence
strong,
and
like
other
needs to be,
things,
like, underlined,
the modern notion
capitalized.
that our chart is a set of energetic possibilities to be sort of understood and then manipulated to create what we want isn't really true to
Our
the tradition.
only source
And the main reason for this is really simple.
of light and energy.
Ancient astrologers were not overly
only external
impressed
source.
with using your will to produce things in material reality in the first place. Like, for many different ancient
from
mystics,
the sun.
material realm is a place of, it's samsara. It's thought to be it's sort of illusory. It's in flux. It's impermanent. It's always moving. Time is thought of as cyclical. And in a certain sense, even cause and effect, the realm of cause and effect, the material realm of cause and effect is thought itself to be an illusion. So the spirit or soul that is traveling through this world can easily get bound up and misidentified with these material illusions, and the whole realm of cause and effect is part of that. So for them, there never would have been an emphasis on trying to jimmy rig your chart to get the best thing that you want, or at the least there were probably very clear delineations between people who were using, like there are in all different kinds of traditions, who are using spiritual technology for the sake of getting something that they want, and for the sake of understanding the consciousness that is behind or within the material experience that a person is having. So that's just, again, just like drawing that distinction for me is really important, because insofar as astrology is seen as like, well, get to know your chart and then you get to kind of create your own reality. First of all, that's not in line with the view of fate and karma that most ancient astrologers had, which is important to think about. I mean, we really do have to think about that. But also, again, it's like the appropriate use of the will is really to train oneself to become identified with their consciousness, the spirit or the soul, or with God, however you want to call it. And so, it's not so important that you like figure out how to do your best Venus so that you can get like the world's greatest like marriage, or it's not like do the best Mars that you can do so that you get your best career or something like that.
So
That's
good.
really
So
not the emphasis for ancient astrologers, and for me it hasn't been either. Like in my practice, that has felt as I've kind of advanced along the path of my spiritual practices, that has become more and more of a sort of absurd idea. That's not to say that I'm not interested in utilizing choice or free will. It's just a sort of, there's a kind of spiritual materialism potentially behind the whole paradigm of taking your chart's possibilities and getting what you want out of them. Now, at any rate, many ancient mystics, again, believed that time was cyclical, the material world was more or less deterministic, which is exactly why it's not really the place to go looking for happiness. So in order to find happiness, we have to understand the meaning, and to understand the meaning of choice and freedom, we have to understand the laws of karma. They go together. So astrology is always really a study of karma or fate, and not energetic possibilities and how to use them to manifest the world that you want. That's also not to say that ancient astrologers believed unanimously that the material world was evil or bad either. Now, the other, so those are sort of some of my reasons for like not getting down with the causal model. I don't believe, to summarize, we have a really great way of appealing to modern science, nor do I think we should. Also, I'm not interested in the idea of planetary influences and energies, because I feel that it feeds into a notion of free will and the use of free will with those energies that produces a kind of spiritual egoism. Now, those are my perspectives, especially having sat with thousands and thousands of clients over the years. In the other model that I want to talk about today is called the divinatory model. This is just broadly speaking. The divinatory model suggests that astrology is a form of divination. That it's not in a strict sense some kind of cosmic science. That is not to say that there aren't very interesting mechanisms or laws at place within divination itself, which I'll talk about in a minute, but it separates it from the language and the mindset and the mood of modern science a great deal. So the divinatory model would suggest, for example, that astrology is really a lot like tarot. It's really a lot like runes. It's really a lot like the omens that appear in dreams. It's really a lot like the bird or animal in nature that crosses your path and has a message for you. That it participates in a lineage of divination, and that's where I stand with my practice. So we get caught up in thinking, I think, that astrology is some kind of causal science, and like ancient people were starting to do, and a long history of starting to get caught up in trying to explain. There's a study of fate, and there's a knowledge that there's laws at work, but somehow, Ptolemy kind of going forward, there becomes this almost like the emphasis starts to shift from the mystical experience of divination to the attempt to explain causally how astrology works. And it's a part of an overall weight that's placed on the shoulders of astrology to become a physical, material, explanatory science for all of reality, right? Like nobody puts the weight on the shoulders of tarot to explain the laws of reality, right? And I think the only reason we do that with astrology is because astrology is rooted in math and astronomy. So because it's rooted in math and astronomy and sort of the observable physical world, and it has this long history of being wrapped up in the scientific spirit and trying to explain the physical laws of reality, that people still think of it like a material science. There's a mood that surrounds it that's like, oh, it's like a material science. But again, like we don't place that burden, right? We don't place that burden on our dreams. We don't place that burden on a deck of tarot cards. There's no emphasis on other forms of divination to be ultimate explanatory models of how every last thing works or why every single thing is happening. So I think we get caught up because of the astronomical and mathematical nature of astrology, thinking that it's a literal material science, and that starts to create all sorts of distortions. Divination, of course, suggests an intelligence that's behind or within the material universe and the sort of realm of cause and effect for certain, but its laws are deeply mysterious, and the more that you study divination, the more that you start to actually see what mystics have been telling us over a long period of time, which is that all of time is co-present. The past, the present, and future are all simultaneous to one another, that the appearance of cause and effect is an illusion in the totality of time, which itself is cyclical. These are things that ancient mystics have said, that you practice astrology or divination long enough, you start to actually grok, like you start to actually get it. And it's something that demonstrates itself, that's felt, that becomes an intelligence that lives in your body, but it's not something that we're putting the cart before the horse if we try to make material science arrive at its conclusions prior to practicing its conclusion. Like its answer is something we arrive at by practicing it as an answer. If that's, I know that must sound sort of ridiculous, but so there is an intelligence. Don't get me wrong. There is an intelligence. There is rationality, reasonableness. There's beautiful sort of architecture at work. But one of the main things that we have to, again, just sort of, we have to get into our mind and body is that it's not something that you can get to with the same kind of mindset and mentality as science. You can't, because in science, one of the main things that we're trying to do is we're trying to break things apart and understand how they work. This view teaches us how things work, but it does so by collapsing differences into paradoxical unions. And it's a totally different kind of practice. It's like saying you should really be, if you really want to study science, you need to do yoga. If you really want to study science, you need to practice divination, not just one form of divination probably, but a few, so that you really don't get distracted by astrology's apparently, appearing objective scientific mood. At any rate, in the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna, who's like an avatar, tells Arjuna that the laws of karma are deeply mysterious and not even the wisest sages understand them. He's talking to Arjuna at a time where, the Vedas, the great scientific, basically the great scientific ritual database of the Indian people was at play in the world. And here's Krishna saying, they have these highly evolved ritualistic practices and astrology and things like that. And Krishna's saying, yeah, but not even the wisest of the people who are doing these things understand the laws behind them. So that's really weird to us, because for us in the modern scientific mindset, we think you have to really understand the laws of something thoroughly before you can do it or before you know how it works. And the truth is that with astrology, it's actually fundamentally the opposite. In some ways, you practice astrology, and you're practiced it because you learn certain kinds of rules and certain kinds of methods. But as you go along, the actual practice of it is what teaches you about the intelligence behind it. So that's, again, fundamentally different than looking at the planets and saying like, oh, the planets are causing X, Y, or Z to occur. So divination is sort of like a symbolic science. It works in a way that's really mysterious to the rational linear mind. And we have to remember that all of the ancient sages who invented/received the system of astrology believed that they were given it by gods, right, or by God. And that part of it for us now, in some ways, we when we get into the sort of pseudoscientific language of causality, the planet's causing this, the planet's causing that, this planet's really messing with me, or something like that, or we talk about them as influences and so on and so forth. We're really, and then we think sometimes that we're really evolved, like we've really come such a long way. Now we have this like much more sort of universal, subjective language in which to talk about this stuff. But I think sometimes it's actually just the opposite. Sometimes we actually, it wouldn't hurt us to go back to understanding that the entire system was received in mystical states of consciousness. Like a little bit more of that would be helpful. I can't tell you how many people, if I say, how does astrology work, rather than saying it's a deep mystery, it was received by ancient mystics, they'll start talking to me about Jung's theory of synchronicity, just to be simple about it. That's the kind of problem that I'm careful of in my own practice. At any rate, here's something that is we can say this: for ancient sages, if time is cyclical, right? Think about that. If time is cyclical, if cause and so everything is sort of already co-present in a sense. There's a totality and a unity to time, and it's a cyclically repeating system. Then all that you need within that system to accurately talk about anything in that system is something that mirrors that system. Right, so with astrology, with tarot, with all different kinds of systems of divination, what you often see are closed systems of symbolic, of symbols that move in recurring ways, that have a cyclical dynamic to them, like the I Ching, for example, which moves through a total cycle of stages that repeats endlessly. You have astrology, which is the exact same thing with planetary cycles sort of moving endlessly. In the tarot, you have the same thing happen in a sort of visual narrative form through the journey of the major arcana, sort of cycling endlessly, or the numbered cards sort of telling a story and cycling endlessly. Same thing with the court cards. So in all of these systems, there is something in which there is a sequence in time that's mapped out through different layers of the symbolism, and yet the total system repeats itself sort of endlessly. All the divinatory models sort of have that in common. And when you get to know the relationships between the symbols within that world, that's what's actually facilitating the ability to prognosticate past, present, and future. But you have to remember that even for ancient sages, all of that was still taking place in a sphere of karma or fate, that there were still intelligences above that had control over, like God's providence or angels or potentially even your guru or saintly people, that there have always been forces that are in a sense higher than and can intervene within that realm as well. And so astrology has never really been some kind of, I mean, to some people a little bit, but it's never really been some kind of strictly deterministic closed system, right? Your choices are always playing a role. Providence, angels, enlightened beings. Like there's a lot of things going on where where different forces or influences can come down into that realm of karma and fate, which more or less operates in a more deterministic manner. But insight into the deterministic nature of karma is gained by participating within a closed language that mirrors the realm of karma, that mirrors the stories, that mirrors the repetitive nature of the stories and the relationship of different facets of the stories to one another within those cycles. So at any rate, the divinatory model basically, though, to break it down really, really simply, suggests that the planets are omens and signs, not causes. So you could think of the planets, houses, and signs of a birth chart, to make a simple analogy, like the rotating, like a rotating tarot deck moving through the sky. So in a sense, if you think of a birth chart, right, you got 12 houses, right? Think of each one of the houses of a birth chart like the positions in a 12-card tarot spread. You've got one card holder position for health, one for money, one for siblings, one for property and family, etc. The whole wheel has 12 different positions that the cards can hold. The planets and signs moving through the sky by means of the primary motion, just rotating round and round every day, are like a rotating deck of cards that are endlessly moving through those positions, through those card positions that represent those different dimensions of the reading. Now, the planets and signs are like the individual cards then. So like, you've got the Saturn card rather than the High Priestess, or you have the Venus card rather than, the Fool or something like that, right? So you have the different signs and planets are rotating through the different houses, like tarot cards moving through the different positions of a spread. And at any given point when you're pausing it to cast a chart, you're just freeze framing the sky, and that wherever the cards land within those houses, traditionally they were whole sign houses basically for this reason, in my opinion, then you have that becomes your reading. That's your divination, right? It's not that those things are then impressing themselves upon you, right? Like, think about this. Like, if you sit down and you say, what will my 2018 be like? And you cast 12 tarot cards in a circle, do you really believe that those 12 tarot cards are impressing into 2018 at that moment, which is a seed in time, some kind of force that will then manifest? No, nobody really believes that about tarot, because we don't have a hard time looking at a tarot spread and saying these cards are omens or signs. They're omens or signs that point to forces, laws that are at work, that are beyond rational comprehension.
Get out of here, man! Don't such a cop out.
Nobody gets freaked out about tarot in that way.
This is a 3-year-old video.
But with astrology, we get all crazy about it.
Like that.
So at any given moment in time, the sky can be thought of like a moving tarot deck. Think about it that way, and you won't get as, from my divinatory perspective, you won't get as caught up in understanding both why there are certain planetary effects happening at some time and why they're not really effects. So nobody casts a tarot spread, sees the Page of Cups and says, the Page of Cups is going to start messing with you and could cause you to get pregnant unless, you really harness the Page of Cups and make sure that the beams coming down from the Page of Cups, like, don't turn into a baby. Like, that's not how tarot is read. It's not to say that the Page of Cups couldn't show up in a reading and give you some sort of advice or insight, or, couldn't be more of a suggestion or a form of guidance. But nobody says in a spread where a Page of Cups indicates an upcoming pregnancy that the Page of Cups literally caused you to get pregnant. Nobody says if you cast the Devil card in a tarot spread that the Devil card literally caused you to get addicted to drugs that year. Right? Nobody says those things because we understand that they're signs. If you see an eagle in nature and then you meet an important person in the next day or two, nobody says, oh, that eagle caused you to meet that person. If you have a dream that gives you some sense of what's happening or an insight into something or a warning, no dream says it caused you to follow the advice. Nobody says that dream is causing something to happen. So now I want to be careful because in some ways all of this is just semantics, right? But it's important because when we walk around talking about the planets and we don't treat them as signs and omens, then we constantly give the planets some kind of responsibility that's usually on us, right? Like if Saturn's entering your 7th house, that's about your karma from a more traditional standpoint, or your fate, however you want to think about it. They're basically the same concepts. That's about your karma. Saturn's not messing with you, right? It's there's a flower in your garden of life, perhaps planted from previous lifetimes worth of actions and choices that you made, that's going to blossom. The planet's not messing with you. Now, Saturn entering your 7th isn't just fated events, though. Saturn entering your 7th could also appear as a warning, just like a dream where you say, I have a dream that there's a snake in there's a snake in my office drawer at work, right? And it tips you off to the fact that there's growing contention in the workplace, and so you become a little bit more mindful not to trigger it, not to get into it. Omens can act as guides. They can act as informants on things that are happening. They can give us advice, and they can be about karma and fated events. And there's not an easy and clear way of delineating those things other than practicing. See, we think from the very beginning we have to solve which is which because we can't imagine the burden of having to sort out when an omen is a prognosticator or when it's a piece of advice. But that's a cop-out. What we need to do is actually practice divination over a long period of time. You can't throw prediction out just because you don't know how to use it, and you can't throw giving advice out or giving a warning out just because you're not sure if the person has the freedom to actually use that in a situation. Those complexities are exactly the spiritual crucible that astrology is putting an astrologer through for the sake of their own learning. That's exactly why we're doing astrology, is to learn those differences and to see where grace is where we thought it wasn't, or to see where karma is where we were we were projecting something that we wished for, that we shouldn't have been wishing for. But all of those lessons are part of the humility that we have to take on. We have to take up those things with humility in our hearts if we want to do astrology. That's my very charismatic opinion. So anyway, now, that's the divinatory model also offers perhaps the most solid explanations as to why so many different approaches to astrology can work. Like, as long as we're in the causal, material model, and we're trying to say, well, the planets are doing things and everything like that, well, then eventually we're going to have to create a system of astrology that expands to the entire universe. All right, we're placing upon the shoulders of astrology the weight of figuring out a grand unifying theory. Good luck with that. That's not my goal, right? I fundamentally believe that if there is any grand unifying theory to be realized, that it's probably not going to be realized in, any kind of intellectual sense, not any kind of like going into it with the scalpel of reason, right? To me, that's fruitless. But again, that's just me. But why is it, like, there's tons of different tarot spreads that one could use and get good results on when asking about the year ahead or a difficult situation at work or something like that? Why is it that we don't give that same flexibility to the fact that so many different house systems work, or that we squabble amongst each other over which zodiac is correct? Or frankly, we see people trying to create all sorts of systems that try to unify every last freaking thing out there: tarot, I Ching, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, the meridian lines, all of it. It's called, it's called divination 7.0, and I've wrapped every system into one. That same kind of attitude really bothers me, because it's really not about it's not about trying to unify every single symbol that appears in the world, or every single thing that's out there, into one explanatory model. Why do different asteroids, zodiacs, house systems work? It's because when we entrain ourselves to the use of symbols within a contained system that demonstrates a cyclical intelligence, where the omens have the power to speak within the system, and they can mirror, because they're a part of that closed system that's again cyclical like that. They can mirror what's happening in the realm of karma and samsara. They have the power to speak, and something from beyond can also speak through them. So, you can use asteroids, you can use different house systems, you can use those things because you're entraining yourself to the use of symbols within a closed system like that. For example, I have a student who wanted to test this theory out while we were studying together over the course of time, and she used she had like if I remember correctly, it was like a lunch pail that she kept like 100+ movie stubs in. Just stubs that she collected from going to the movies. And rather than using tarot cards, what she did, because she had a really in-depth personal relationship to movies and all of the characters and actors and their life story, I mean, she knew a ton about the characters and people and stories and movies, and like she had this encyclopedic knowledge, right, of like everything that was involved with these movies that were represented on these stubs. So when someone came for a reading, she started pulling a movie stub or several movie stubs in a spread, and it worked just as effectively as tarot. Why? How is that possible? Right? It's possible because she created a closed system, right? She created a closed system that reflects cyclical, sort of archetypal cyclical dynamics, but within a contained sort of contained system.
Calling bullshit on this. This is speculation.
That worked for her. It was really cool that it actually worked like that. Think about this one, for example. Most people don't even think about this, but think about transits, right? How do transits work? No, sometimes I get students who are like intelligent enough to ask. Other people just take it for granted. They're like, think about it. I'm 36 years old. How is it possible that looking at the planets in the sky today, 36 years after I was born, that the planets in the sky today, that I would look at them and then look at where they are in relationship to where they were 36 years ago, and that the relationship between where they all are now and where they all were 36 years ago, including 100 asteroids if I wanted to or not, could speak accurately about what's about to happen in my life, could offer prognostication. How is that even possible, right? Well, it's much easier if you think about it like a tarot spread. If you pause the spread at the moment of birth, there's my birth chart, right? And I've got the cards arranged in the wheel in their different positions. But as I freeze framed that, the same exact spread keeps ticking now in a wheel outside of that wheel. And it's moving around the inner wheel that I paused. So now I have like a secondary tarot spread that's moving in relationship to the initial one, and it is a symbolic image of it's a symbolic image of the continued relationship between the moving tarot spread and the original spread that I cast. At which point I pause that spread again, like today, and I say, okay, where's the outer tarot spread, the one that's kept moving since I was born, in relationship to the inner one that I paused at the moment of my birth? Then I look at the juxtaposition between the cards in the outer wheel and the cards in the inner wheel. Well, nobody has a problem with that in tarot whatsoever. Nobody stops to ask, why it is that that leads to accurate divinatory results. In tarot, it works like this. You have a spread, let's say 12 cards in a circle, right? For the 12 months of the year or something like that. As you're going and you're speaking with a client and you're unraveling the symbolism of each card, an interesting question arises. Something symbolically resonates and they say, oh, I think I know what that's about. And they're digging into it, and then always they say, but maybe, what do you think it means this, or do you think it means that? What does the tarot reader do? They flip another card and place it right on top. That's the exact same logic at work. It's the exact same kind of divinatory logic that's at work, and nobody stops to question it whatsoever. The reason that nobody stops to question is because people don't question divination. They don't question it because they recognize that to understand how divination works is a different kind of knowledge acquisition process. You have to somehow enter into it to understand it. So I liked, for that reason, like, let's say that right now, like, let's say Venus card was rising when I was born. Venus is rising. So the Venus card is like in the first house, the first position. Now in the outer wheel, Saturn has come to be at the opposite side of the chart, facing that Venus. How do I look at the juxtaposition of those cards in order to read them as an omen? It could be a warning. It could be a set of instructions. It could be a literal prognostication. And a good reader knows when the difference is to go to which because of experience, or they might list all of the above. A little bit of instruction, a little bit of advice, a little bit of insight, and a little bit of prognostication. So again, and you can't learn that by any other way than doing it. Try at the outset, trying to define or determine how astrology exists so that you can try to get around the difficulties of having all of that present at once within an omen, is to fundamentally disrespect the nature of omens. And nobody has a hard time, nobody disrespects omens when they're, having tarot cards cast. Nobody really, in my experience, nobody spends as much time trying to solve how it is that tarot cards work. Because there's a more deeply numinous, mysterious, and just kind of awe-inspiring reverence for omens. But, the sky, because there's math and there's sort of like a science involved, again, we drop right out of the heart a lot of the times. Anyway, those are my thoughts there. The divinatory model also explains why the history of astrology is replete with so many different non-literal methods of interpretation, like, for example, profections. Well, what are you doing with a perfection? In an annual perfection, you're advancing a whole sign house in the chart by one year and one whole sign house at a time. It's an incredibly accurate prognostication system. Time Lords are the same way. They're numerological. Progressions, symbolic progressions of the chart that are not based in literal movements of the planets. All of those things, right? They're pointing toward a model of divination. Now, so I would say, that the tarot analogy is really helpful for people when they're first encountering astrology. And when you start just unworking the mind from thinking that the planets are literally doing something to you. Think of the planets like a tarot card. Think of them like the dream image. That also immediately usually helps people solve the dilemmas between things like fate and free will. An omen. If you ever watch the show Vikings, which I'm really into right now, is my descendants are some ways from the Vikings, so I was interested in the show. There's a seer in the village that all the Viking people go and see all the time. He's someone who can give them warnings. He's someone who can give them the decrees of the gods. He's someone who can say, I can't tell you. He's someone who can say, here's some advice, but you won't listen. Here's someone who can say, you can change this, you must go and do this. All of that information is part of what divination is capable of, right? So again, we stumble over that kind of stuff a lot because we don't understand the planets as omens. So let's see, where are my notes here? Now, because our ritual is mathematical and astronomical, we get confused. And I would like to see this view of the planets and as astrology as more omen and oracular, because I think it shuts down a lot of debates that are really unnecessary. At any rate, And it teaches you the real way of learning about the intelligence behind astrology is to do it. It's like someone coming up to you and saying, hey, you want to understand the benefits of meditation? Let me tell you about it. Right? Like most people are like, don't I have to meditate to figure that out? You know what I mean? Like, isn't there some kind of like, I have to like actually participate in the meditating to understand what it delivers? And we forget that about divination, right? So a lot of people in the beginning, we overcompensate. We try to come up with theories that demonstrate the validity of astrology so that people will believe in it. But it's the other way around. You believe in astrology long before most people have an experience with astrology that causes them to believe. And from that point forward, the actual practicing of astrology is what leads to the understanding of the intelligence behind the generative force. That's very, very important. Finally, last thing I'll say is that I do believe that because astrology is so mathematical and astronomical, it could said to be, it is probably the most yang form of divination that our planet has ever seen. In my opinion, astrology is a very masculine form of divination.
Yo, Shiva.
And that doesn't mean that only men are interested in it. I think that it appeals to a more like it appeals to in yoga. There's a whole set of yogis that are called, they're interested in jnana, which is like knowledge, and that's a path to liberation, to insight, to spiritual freedom. And I believe that astrology falls in line with people who are really interested in studying the mechanics of karma and fate. Anything that we devote ourselves to with full love, whether it's singing bhakti songs to God, right, or whether it's a more hardcore study of the science of karma, I think either way, where it leads you, if you stay devoted in heart, is to God, is to the divine, is to spirit. That's how I conceptualize it. But ultimately, I do believe that we also have to be very careful that we are including studies that are feminine, right? So, tarot for me is the sort of the face of the popular face of the feminine in divination, because it's imagistic and it's visual, and it depicts scenes from life and people and places and colors, and it has to me it has a more feminine mood surrounding it. And so I think it's very important, if you really want to not have astrology turn into just a super mental thing, for it to be an actual devotional practice that moves the soul, that helps the spirit actually I guess progress on the spiritual path. I do think that it has to be countered with devotional things. Now, a lot of people have no problem with that. I know a lot of people who study astrology who are, they sing, they dance, they get into the body, they're doing breath work, and good. That's great. I think also studying a more feminine form of divination is important. Now, that's not to say there aren't deeply feminine aspects of astrology. I'm just saying overall, the math and science part of astrology, I think, have a more sort of yang vibe to it. So that's important. And then I think last but not least, I can tell you how many of my students, when I try to get them to imagine the moving tarot deck in the sky, something immediately just opens up. It's like, thank you. I can get down with that, right? I can immediately enter into it. The doors come just wide open right away. The other thing is that real divination, in my opinion, really good divination, it has to have the power to predict and prognosticate as well as to advise. So nowadays, a lot of people really hate prediction. But for thousands of years, if you go to see a seer, a sage, a prophet, a guru, people who study these things or have enlightened powers have a combination of advice-giving ability, counseling, and prognostication. To shy away from prognostication and to create some elaborate model of how there is no such thing as fate or destiny or karma, to me, is completely foolish. Now, people could disagree with me, that'd be fine, but whatever. As I always like to say, I would never want to lose a friend over any of this. But in my opinion, one of the benefits of studying traditional astrology that I've run into, as well as things like horary, that have tighter methodologies for prognostication and prediction, that you can actually see that these things are not, they work. And so for me, it's very important that for divination to be really good, you have to have you have to have a contained system. You have to have consistent methodologies that you entrain yourself to. You have to know why you use them, and you have to be able to use them both to give knowledge, advice, or counseling, to facilitate a psychological kind of co-creative experience with someone, as well as to prognosticate and predict. And you have to figure out how to do those two things at once. I have not found anything better than studying Hellenistic astrology, medieval astrology, Indian astrology, and horary astrology for developing that side of the skill in astrology. So I really recommend that more people check that out. That's specifically why I developed my course, Ancient Astrology for Modern Times. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you could always check out, shameless self-promotion here, you could always check out my website, nightlightastrology.com, for more on that. That's all that I wanted to say today. What I've been trying to do with these video blogs is, have more content in addition to the daily forecasting, weekly and monthly forecasting, so that I'm offering challenging and interesting philosophical insight. They're also going to be really practical things. So coming up in the next couple of months, I also plan on doing very simple things like how to think about houses and signs and planets, and how to think about a planet entering a certain house. And so there'll be craft-based stuff as well as philosophical stuff. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Let me see if I see. Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I missed. Right. So I'm seeing a bunch of things here. Let's see if you haven't missed any questions. I didn't want to miss any questions, but I want.
What up? Come on, man. Come here. Target sighted. Damn.
If I get the wind generator back online, I'll get power to the lower basement.
Jeez. Intruder alert! Everybody, get her!
Interesting story.
Attack! No escape! You! Get her!
Joanna, it's Grimshaw. We got hackers at the villa. We gotta stop them.
Come here.
Our files.
Hackers have been stopped before I rescue Daniel.
My gun! We've got a contact!
Gun step.
My gun! Help me out. I'm going for help.
They must be holding Daniel.
Target? One step by. Damn it.
So,
Oh,
Previously
yeah.
on
Like the
8-Bit Show
snipers
and Tell.
everything?
I am the C64. Here is a set of tutorial programs to help you get the most out of your Commodore 64. There's 6 volumes here. Overall introduction to the C64. Oh, some little guys dropping down. Shoot. Get them! Why are you just sitting there? Introduction to the keyboard. Yeah, it does accurately have the Petsky symbols there of the heart and the bottom left corner there. Press the S key to continue. Ooh. Introduction to the basic programming language. Okay. Ooh. Wow.
This month's full moon brings us a call to action, great transformation, the ending of cycles, and so much more. Know what the energy of this week brings to you so that you can better navigate this human experience. I sound like such an alien when I say that. Navigate your human experience. Oh. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Leora Alexandra. Welcome to the Bee community. A lot of you have been asking, because I don't know where you've been the last few months, but you're asking now why we're the bee community instead of the baby elephant community. Now, it's not bee as in the beautiful honey bees, buzzing bees, whatever. It's BE. It's just short for baby elephant, and that's because the only constant in life is change, and it just felt like it was time for us to mature a little bit. As many of you know who have been around since the beginning, I started the channel when I was like 23, 24 years old. I'm 28 now. I'm a big girl now. It was time for a little bit of a change, and it just feels more natural to me. So B stands for baby elephant. It's also about being, just be, you know. Why are we here in this human experience again? We're here to be. We just are, right? Does that make sense? It made sense to me, and I like it. So, and a lot of you seem to like it as well. So, we're the bee community now, but it'll always be an homage to the baby elephant, and the icon is always going to be an elephant, so that has not changed. So I know that for a lot of you, myself included, my new moon energy predictions were so on point. If I do say so myself, toot my own horn. I noticed resistance in communication with others, and my ego did kick in, but because I had this kind of backdrop, this information in the back of my mind, of knowing that this was going to happen, that resistances in communication and being reactive and all this stuff would happen, rather than fight, I chose to back up. I became observant rather than reactive. I became more vulnerable. I expressed that I was feeling defensive, and rather than a war, it turned into a love fest. So it was really nice to kind of have that information in the back of my mind, and knowing what potentialities the cosmos are bringing into our interpersonal communications and relationships. So because the feedback was so positive for the new moon energy reading, I decided to do this full moon energy video as well. And because of the many comments I got from people saying that they saw it just a little bit too late, and they did have a fight with somebody and they wish that they saw it earlier, I decided to put this one up as early as possible. I'm trying to get it for you a few days, at least 3 days before the full moon. You should be feeling the energy of this full moon right now. So it's a good time to kind of notice what you're feeling, what's coming up for you, and you're going to see that these themes really kick in for this week. So today, the day that this video comes out, also happens to be the day after the summer solstice, which is a very positive and impactful time. So really quick, I want to talk about the summer solstice energy and its potentiality for manifestation. If you're watching this video on the 21st or really on any day of the rest of the month of June, please use this potent positive energy to manifest. The summer solstice brings with it new opportunities for setting your intentions for the rest of the year. It's a really good time to be consciously and actively manifesting. So I recommend to write down your goals for the rest of the year, to ask for things that you want, ask God, ask the universe, journal your gratitude, affirm that you already have what you're trying to receive. Right now is a very powerful and potent time to expand your vision, okay? Ask for more, shoot for higher things, for bigger things, for more abundance, for our life that's even more dreamlike. Your desires are expanded by Jupiter energy during this time, so I want you to think bigger for yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, think of mansions and private jets and all this big stuff. If that's not what you want, that's not what I want. I'm not thinking like that. It simply means to expand more aspects of yourself into wanting more for yourself, wanting more for your life, for your business, for your relationships, for whatever it is, for your health, for your love. Give yourself permission to desire those things that seem big to you. Allow yourself to desire them and allow yourself to call them in. Think bigger. You came to this planet. You're one of the lucky souls who got a body and who got to incarnate during this time. It's a really big deal. There's a lot of big cosmic energy coming in with the summer solstice right now. So ride that wave and manifest even more for yourself. This is a time to break down your self limitations and the boundaries that you've set for yourself, the limitations that ceiling that you've created yourself. Just burst right through it. It's so gloomy outside, but it's 110 degrees. It's kind of crazy, so you might be able to see that in the lighting of this video. On that same train of thought, the night that this video goes out, the 21st, I am hosting a manifestation ceremony in honor of the big influx of cosmic energy that we are receiving on the summer solstice. It might be sold out by the time that I post this video. If it's not, a link to it down below in the description so you can grab your tickets. They usually sell out within a couple of days, so if there's more available, they will be in the link below. For future references, I do announce my ceremonies first and foremost on Instagram and to my email list. So if you want to make sure you're one of the first to grab those, because it's usually only 100 spots, then make sure you're following me on Instagram or that you're on my email list, which is the best way to hear from me. Now that we've covered the summer solstice a little bit, which I will cover more in tonight's ceremony, I want to talk about the full strawberry supermoon in Capricorn on June 24th. And the major themes that I'm feeling and picking up on that we're going to be faced with. As usual, just a heads up, I'm tapping into the energy of this time, okay? So this is kind of like a download, a channel. It does use astrological, cosmological influences, but this is not an astrology video. I will link some astrologers down below who have inspired kind of the knowings from this video, who activated them. So a supermoon is when the full moon is super close to the earth. We feel the energy of a supermoon much more intensely than, for example, the micromoon when the moon is further away from us. So this is going to be an extremely potent and powerful supermoon. So for this full moon, you're going to feel the energy a couple of days before. Probably by now when you're watching this, you've been feeling it. And you're going to feel it for a few days after as well. I would say 3 to 4 days after. I have kind of 5 main themes that I'm feeling for this supermoon. So the first one is just heightened and intensified emotions, which I find that with most full moons, energy and emotions are intensified. I've talked about this in past videos. I've always grown up in my family. We know that around the full moon, we kind of steer clear of one another because for some reason we're just more irritated, more frustrated, and that does have to do, these days we're not so much like that anymore. In the past, it had to do with an increased need for inner work and shadow work. So if you feel really irritable around the full moon, this is a great time, and I'll talk about this in a second, to do shadow work because your triggers are more readily available. You can see yourself better. So basically what I grew up believing and what I've seen kind of a scientific backing for, really, the moon does influence the tides, and we are made of water, and there is some sort of, if not physical, then symbolic effect on our bodies from the moon being so close to us and pulling on us so intensely. In this particular full moon, we're going to see an even more intense, because not only is it a super moon, meaning it's super close to us, it's also in opposition with the sign Cancer. The sun will be in Cancer during this time, and the moon is ruled by Cancer, so it's in opposition with the sign that it feels most comfortable with. So this creates even more heightened emotions and more tension, more intensity. So what does this mean for us? It basically means, much like what we experienced in the new moon, there's going to be kind of this, even more than in the new moon, of course, there's going to be this desire to kind of, this kind of irritability, heightened emotions. Things might feel a little bit overwhelming, a little bit too much, and you don't have to be affected by this as badly if you are aware. Remember that awareness is the number one step to dealing with these astrological, cosmological influences in our life, to dealing with these themes and these cycles that we go through. If we're aware of something, if we bring light to something, which a full moon tends to do, then it's a lot easier to go through. So my advice is to just be observant during this time. Do not be overly reactive. Things might test you. Take a deep breath, remove yourself from the situation in a pleasant and calm way. Return to it when you're feeling more back to yourself, when you're feeling calmer. So rather than jumping and reacting in the situation, take a breather, take a step back, return when you're feeling more level-headed. Now, as I was saying a little bit earlier, heightened and intense emotions are a perfect time for shadow work. This is so good because your triggers are just so much more in the front of your mind. They're brought to consciousness rather than hiding in the shadows, rather than hiding in your subconscious mind. Full moons are a potent time for shadow work. I have a shadow work course, and I always recommend doing it on the full moon. If you're a part of light work, I really recommend revisiting it. If you've been feeling a little bit more irritable lately, if there's something that you want to work through, maybe do breath work, journal, really be with your emotions, let yourself feel these emotions, don't run away from them. Your triggers are coming up for you to notice them and for you to be able to work with them. So a lot of people, when they're talking about, it's a lot of fear mongering where it's like things are going to be really intense, it's a little scary, you're going to feel overwhelmed, blah, blah, blah. But in my perspective, it's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity for more healing, for deeper understanding of self, understanding of self. So kind of take advantage of that. There's a lot of benefits to that. Observe what stirs you, what's moving you on the inside in a good or bad way. Decide whether there's a trait or a thought pattern or a habit or a behavior that no longer serves you, and then work through it. The second theme that I'm picking up on is there's going to be revealing of some sort of truth. So this week is going to reveal something to you, and right around the full moon, as it often does, but especially with this super moon, the moon's energy will shine a light on something that you have not been willing to look at, something that you have not seen before, either willfully ignorant to it, blissfully ignorant from it. Whatever it is, you will no longer be able to look away from this thing that's going to come up, and you're going to see it clearly now. There's something that you really have to look at, and it's going to reveal itself to you during this time. The third theme that I'm picking up on is something that happens every month with the full moon, of course, which that is completion, something coming into wholeness, fullness, perhaps the ending of some sort of cycle in your life, something that you may have started during the new moon or before the new moon coming to an end, something that started on a previous new moon, even from 6 months ago, coming to an end now. If you are into astrology, if you see where the full moon is in your chart, you can better tell in what area of your life this completion, this coming into fullness is going to happen, whether it's in a relationship, something to do with work, something to do with family, something to do with a project, some sort of inner work, whatever it is. Something is coming to completion during this time. There's an energy of something perhaps coming to an end. And this not being such a bad thing. Perhaps it is propelling us for something new. If we're brave enough to say goodbye to this thing, something new might be coming in. The next theme that I picked up on, did I say 4 or 5? Yeah, so this is the fourth. It's having a bigger picture in mind for what you want for yourself in the future. And this has to do with Jupiter energy. It has to do with that summer solstice energy that I talked about in the beginning of this video. Right now with all this Jupiter energy, it's a time to just think bigger for yourself, because Jupiter brings with it expansion to whatever it touches, right? Have you been perhaps a little bit complacent in your life? Have you maybe kind of kicked your feet up and you're like, well, here I am. That's all there is to it. I believe that it's time to think bigger in one way or another. Perhaps you started working on something new, and you're thinking too small. This is a time to re-envision what this is going to look like. Re-envision your future. Re-envision what your life is going to look like. And it doesn't have to be like riches and grandeur. It doesn't have to be like that. It's whatever that means to you. What does bigger mean to you? Doesn't mean more comfort. Doesn't mean more family. Doesn't mean, more self-acceptance. Just having a bigger and bolder vision for yourself. So kind of becoming aware of that and noticing what this potentiality, what this energy brings into your life, and noticing what thoughts you have around this time. What dreams do you have during this full moon that have to do with thinking bigger, wanting more things, wanting bigger things, wanting more for yourself, wanting more for others in your life. I'm curious, when I talk about this, about thinking bigger, envisioning bigger, what does this look like for you? I'd love to hear about that in the comments, because that would help me, and it would help a lot of other people who are not really understanding where in their lives they could think bigger. Like for myself, for example, I'm trying to think about what I could re-envision, and I think that in my business I could be thinking bigger. I think that in my social life, perhaps I could be thinking bigger. I'm actually thinking about working. I have a bunch of new ideas. Of course, it's a Leo moon when I record this particular video, and all day long I've had all these ideas, and I want to jump into action, and I'm thinking that this is a really good time to rethink these desires that I have and maybe even think bigger about them. I'm thinking about doing some sort of in-person event towards the end of the year if everything goes well, and maybe I can think even bigger. I want to re-envision my life, and I want to see how much more I can push this physical human experience. How much more can I manifest for myself? It's all fun. It's really, really fun, and you should have fun with this. The last theme that I'm picking up on is this intensified need or desire for freedom. There's a possibility that we're going to become more aware of shackles that we had around our feet and around our hands that we may not have noticed there before. And that could be on a big societal level, or it could be on a personal level. Perhaps being shackled to a job, or to a person, or to a relationship, or shackled to the way that we think about ourselves, and we might become more aware of it during this time and decide that we want more freedom. We're going to have an opportunity to break through these shackles during this time, to reevaluate what we want for ourselves, and to see more clearly, because we have all this truth coming out, all this light coming in, completion coming in, new cycles starting, old cycles ending. There's potentialities for big transformation here. So noticing kind of what controls us and what's been holding us back, and breaking through these things. So these are the 5 things that I'm picking up on in the collective, in the energy that is related to the cosmos, to the astral realms, to everything that's going on an energetic micro and macro level. If this resonated, please let me know in the comments below. How are you feeling? What does it mean for you to have a bigger vision for your future? I want to know in the comments below. If you like these videos, if you like these energetic updates, please give this video a thumbs up. The reason why I did this one is because there was so much positive feedback on the new moon one. So your comments and your likes really, really affect the content of this channel. I'm listening to you. I care. I love you. Thank you for spending some time with me. And until next time, take it easy this week. This full moon is an intense one. I love you so much, and keep your vibrations way, way, way up. Bye.
Sorry, Sadhguru. Sadhguru. Alright, probably one more bicep curl, and then I'm probably going to sign off. I'm going to eat dinner, I think, but man.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome back to my podcast for those of you who are listening to this episode on my podcast Written in the Stars by Rux, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to it yet, it is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Today, we are going to be talking about the full moon happening on the 24th of June in Capricorn at, let me tell you, 3 degrees and 27 minutes of Capricorn. But before we jump in, I have a few things that I would like to mention from the very beginning. First and foremost, I am a Western tropical astrologer, and all the episodes on my podcast and all the videos on my YouTube channel follow Western tropical astrology. Secondly, I use the whole sign house system. In the whole sign house system, the sign of your ascendant is the sign that governs your entire first house. The sign after the ascendant will govern your second house in your natal chart, and so on. Why do I use the whole sign house system? Because I have found it to be the most accurate in my experience and in my clients' experience, especially when it comes to timings and forecasting. Thirdly, if you want to work with me, if you want to book a reading, a natal chart reading, a yearly forecast reading, a live consultation, you can find me on my website, which is writteninthestars-astrology.com. So again, writteninthestars-astrology.com. And in the services section, you're going to find the various types of readings that you can go for.
Appreciate it, man.
Last but not least, whenever you are listening to one of my videos / episodes, I strongly recommend, especially when it comes to forecasting, I strongly recommend that you first and foremost listen to the update for your ascendant, for your rising sign / ascendant. The ascendant is the exact degree of your rising sign, because that is essentially how you enter the world. That is where your natal chart begins. That is how you approach the world around you, and you might find that you resonate more with it, and secondly, that you find it more accurate. But the sun sign update is also really good if you do not know your rising sign, and we as individuals identify with the sun generally. The sun is our ego, hence why there is still value in listening to the update for your sun sign. Let's talk about the full moon in Capricorn happening on the 24th of June. So to be more precise, folks, this is happening at 6:39 in the evening GMT. And full moons, as I am very sure you know already, represent peaks, culminations, endings, a period of closure. And this full moon is going to reflect back to events or to themes that may have kicked off in your life around the new moon in Capricorn happening in January 2021 on the 13th of January. So my very first recommendation is have a think about what was going on in your life around the 13th of January. 3 days before, 3 days after, you hear me mention this sort of like time frame all the time. You could look through your email archive. You could look through your Instagram stories archives. Speaking of Instagram, you can also follow me on Instagram at Rux, unbelievable in one word. And I actually post stories, updates quite often, almost on a daily basis. Not exactly on a daily basis, but almost on a daily basis. So the first thing to keep in mind is that this full moon is the peak of a cycle that kicked off 6 months ago. What do the aspects in the sky look like on the day of the eclipse? My apologies, not the eclipse. So when I'm filming this, Mercury is still retrograde, so please don't shoot the messenger if I have some sort of slip of the tongue. So what's happening on the day of the full moon on the 24th of June? We obviously have the moon in the sign of Capricorn in opposition to the sun in the sign of Cancer. Both the sun and the moon are going to be in a harmonious aspect to Jupiter at the time in Pisces. So the sun is going to be trining Jupiter and the moon is going to be sextiling Jupiter. Generally, when we have aspects to Jupiter, the news is positive. The events that come up bring with them hope of a specific kind. Jupiter in Pisces also brings an abundance of healing. So there may be this feeling of us being healed in some shape or form. Now, the more challenging part about this full moon is the fact that the ruler of the full moon, Saturn, the dispositor of the moon, is going to be in an opposition to Mars. Saturn is actually moving past an exact square to Uranus, but Saturn is going to be forming and applying, therefore, an increasingly powerful opposition with Mars. Now, what can this bring at a collective level? Okay, so the full moon as a whole is probably going to bring some sort of good news connected to rules, to status, to maybe the lockdowns, maybe something connected with legal matters, something connected with institutions. There could be also news connected with people's livelihoods, connected with their homes, connected with their past. There can be some sort of positive news coming to the table from our leaders, because Capricorn is associated with leadership, and especially in mundane astrology, it's associated with the government. Now, I know there's a lot of skeptics out there, and again, do not shoot the messenger, but it does look like the majority of people are likely to be pleased in some shape or form that some sort of issue that is connected with legal matters, that is connected with the law, that is connected with rules, that is connected with restrictions also, because Saturn and Capricorn in general are associated with tradition, conservatism, and at the same time maintaining boundaries, maintaining restrictions. So there could be this feeling of some restrictions being dissolved, some restrictions being lifted off. Jupiter, let's not forget, is also the ruler of long distance travel, so there could be new rules, or there could be the time to say goodbye to some restrictions connected with travel. But at the same time, there is something that really rubs people off the wrong way at the time of this full moon. And if you ask me, it probably is going to have to do with the fact that people's willpower feels stifled in some shape or form. Their initiative feels stifled in some shape or form. Why do I say this? Because Mars is connected with willpower. Mars, which is in opposition to Saturn at the time, is connected with individuality. It is connected with autonomy. It is connected with entrepreneurship. It is connected with boldness. It is connected with stamina. And Saturn kind of like puts the damper on the whole stamina thing and on the whole willpower thing. It's a mixed feelings type of full moon. It can feel like, okay, we know that some liberties are going to be given back to the people, but at the same time, something connected with their individuality and with their freedom to choose and with their freedom to lead themselves, Mars, is taken away from them. Now, my guess is, and those of you who work with me know that I always mention the fact that astrology does not predict exact material manifestation. Why? Because astrology is a language of symbols and archetypes that anticipates possibilities and studies patterns, but it does not take away our free will. But my guess is, from a material manifestation perspective, that something connected with vaccine passports maybe is going to be introduced, possibly some sort of strict adherence to a specific set of rules is going to be introduced if we want to go back to traveling or moving around the world in the same way that we have moved in the past. So that's my 2 cents. It could be a different type of restriction that is being imposed upon people. It could be a different type of rule that is being imposed upon people, and people are like, why are you taking my choice away? But I suppose we shall see around the world how this plays out. Now, let us dive into the updates for each zodiac sign. What can each zodiac sign expect from this full moon? Don't forget, listen to your sun sign and to your rising sign as well. Now,